Welcome back, Camden Catholic. Oh, man. So, trying to get this up by, Saturday night. That way you can, watch it tonight or watch it all day whenever you want to tomorrow. But remember, this flip's due on Monday. Don't forget. And we will end up having our next test before we go for break. Because we have 4 countries to talk about when we talk about absolutism. We're going to talk about Spain, Russia, France, and England. Sort of, anyway. But the English one is long, the Russian one is long, the French one not so much, and the Spanish one not so much. So let's talk about Spain today, okay? So it also chronologically kind of all goes in order. But anyway, first let's start off with the general traits of an absolutist government, which you don't necessarily know this, but you need to organize these because I didn't do this in a way that makes as much sense. So traits of absolutism, right? Absolutism being our big capital letter A. We got the A, B, C, D of absolutism, okay? So you got absolutism being your big A. The first one, if I were you, I'd write down bureaucracy, right? Now, to give you a heads up and a reminder, when we talked about bureaucratic systems in governments, a bureaucracy is a multi-level government, meaning that a king or a leader has people beneath him that enact different policies, like legislators or tax collectors or systems of a multi-level government, okay? So people beneath him, and as you go down, the groups get larger, and they help make everything effective, and they implement different levels of government, right? So bureaucracy. The C is the centralized government. A centralized government refers to a government that is led from one place, much like when we talked about Egypt versus Mesopotamia. So you've got capital cities or governments that emanate from one location, okay? So you've got London in England, you got Paris in France, you got Madrid in Spain. Is Madrid the capital of Spain? Yeah, I think so too. And you've got Moscow in Russia, right? The last one is probably the most important one, which you need to underline, is divine right to rule, okay? So a lot of these countries don't even have constitutions, okay? They don't even have a piece of paper that sets this up. However, it's constantly understood that they have a divine right to rule in the terms of they believe, and the people of their country believe, that they are literally being led by a person who was bestowed this power by God, right? Kings believe that the power was bestowed upon them by God. The people believed it. The church even probably believed it, right? So divine right to rule, the idea that God chose them as rulers. It's a very ancient thing when you think about it. But like I said, the big absolutist countries that we got to talk about are Spain, France, Russia, and England, sort of. Now anyway, but let's get into Spain first. So looking at the map of Europe right here, really quick, kind of store this in your mind. We still got the big dogs. We've got the Kingdom of Poland from this time period, which is kind of just, it's going to get washed over by Russia, but right now it's the Tsardom of Russia, and blah, 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 but it was ruled by the Mongols for forever and a day. We're not going to get into that yet. So then we've got the Ottoman Empire down here, which is basically the Muslim empires. We've got the Austrians right here that actually goes half in and half out of something else. We've got Italy still broken up into a bunch of different places. Spain, Portugal, France, England, and then, of course, Ireland, Scotland, and all your other guys up here. But our big guy in the middle is still, right here, outlined in red, the Holy Roman Empire, right? And speaking of the Holy Roman Empire, wait really quick, what's the name of the Holy Roman Empire today? Very good job, Nev. It's what you would call Germany today, okay? So, moving forward, though, Charles V, okay? Probably the most famous Holy Roman Emperor, right? Was from a very wealthy family known as the Habsburg family, right? So Charles V, in his awesome getup here, and this thing is called a jerkin that he's wearing, controlled massive swaths of land in Europe. He controlled Spain, the Holy Roman Empire, parts of Italy, and even the Netherlands, and even Belgium and different areas like that. So, big-time Catholic, huge Catholic. However, he is literally write this down, he is the Holy Roman Emperor when Martin Luther is performing the Reformation in the Holy Roman Empire, right? We always call Martin Luther German, but he's actually just a citizen of the Holy Roman Empire. And he's also German, though, as well, culturally speaking. So, remember, he's a big-time Catholic, but he's going to pass laws letting Germans pick their religion, okay? So he actually tries to bring some of this violence down from the Reformation and tries to be a good leader. He tries to be a nice guy, right? even though he gets married to his cousin, but that's a whole other thing we're going to get into in a second. So these are the different places that Charles V controls, or Charles I of Spain, if you want to call him that. He controls Spain, he controls northern Italy, he controls all of the Holy Roman Empire, and even up here in the Holy Roman Empire, he controls Netherlands up here as well. So as you can see, he controls almost 20% of Europe, right? Huge, huge leader, very, very powerful. Continuing forward with him, though, later on, he was crowned Holy Roman Empire at the age of 19, right? He's going to get married, he's going to have 3 kids, 2 daughters and a boy, but he decides he can't handle the pressure. He can't handle the pressure of his family ruling over this entire gigantic area, right? So he decides to split his family into 2 branches, right? The Austrian branch and a Spanish branch. And he retires. He steps off the throne. He abdicates. And he gives it to his son, Philip II. And the Holy Roman Empire to his brother, Ferdinand. So Holy Roman Empire is going to begin to pass over to the Austrian side. That's his brother Ferdinand, the Austrian. And then he gives Spain and the Spanish Empire to his son, Philip. The lines are redrawn. Spain has this huge territory in North America right now. They are also going to be able to control Belgium and the Netherlands as well. So his son, Philip, becomes king, yeah? Fun facts about the Habsburgs, lots and lots of incest. Like, they literally married their cousins and had kids with their cousins, like, way too much. Don't do it, period, but they did it to an extreme. Also, fun fact, Philip I is Charles I, so Charles V's dad. His name was Philip the Handsome. It's just a fun thing to know. But anyway, looking over here, if you check this out, this right here is signs of inbreeding in the Habsburg family. There was a degenerative condition that several of them had. It's called the Habsburg jaw. You see how huge their jaws are? They actually had massive underbites as well. None of them were as bad as this guy, though. Wait, come back. Let me go up to him. There he is. Charles II of Spain. Charles II of Spain also suffered from some cognitive difficulties as well due to all the inbreeding. He could barely speak. He could barely chew. Had issues with drooling. He couldn't walk until he was 8 years old. Couldn't speak until he was 4 years old. But he ended up still becoming king of Spain, right? So, insane stuff. The Habsburgs are some weird people. But make sure you know who the Habsburgs are, all right? Going forward, though, let's talk about Philip II, his son. Philip II, very shy, very recluse, but a ferocious Catholic, right? An insanely intense Catholic. He believed that his father dropped the ball on the Reformation, right? So he believed that his father should never allow this thing called the Peace of Augsburg, which was actually literally a law that went down saying that Lutherans were allowed to exist unpersecuted, right? So he thought that Protestants and Lutherans and Calvinists need to be wiped out of Europe. He did not like them at all. He's going to take over control of Portugal, and he's going to become the richest country in the country/ruler in the world. Now, a lot of this has to do with the fact that he controls now Portugal, right? Now, this gives you a little bit of an idea why the Portuguese got shoved out by the Dutch later on, because they were actually controlled by Spain for quite some time as massive allies. But he controls, write this down, Philip II controls South America, North America, and Central America. He controls the Netherlands, Belgium, all these huge amounts of land. He's got a ton of gold and silver coming in from the different colonies. And so he decides in this whole thing that to keep up precedence, he's going to reach over and he's going to try and control England as well. So who does he marry but Mary Tudor? He married Bloody Mary. She actually is going to get married to him when she's much older than he is. She was about 39, almost 40, and then he was in his 20s, very, very young. And she never actually went to Spain. It was kind of a sham of a marriage. Everybody was crossing their fingers oh, wait, maybe Mary's going to have a kid, and then that way England will go back to being Catholic again. But they never actually had kids. And apparently he cheated on her all the time and did whatever he wanted to do. He was actually the king of England, though, during this marriage. But unfortunately, she's going to die. And when she dies childless, which means he loses control of England due to the fact that he wasn't staying there. And he also hates Elizabeth I with a fiery passion. So rule of England is going to pass to Elizabeth, right? So Elizabeth I takes control of England. Philip believes that since she's a dirty, nasty Protestant, that he's going to go in there, destroy her, and reestablish himself as the King of England and as a Catholic ruler. So brings on the massive event, put a star next to this thing, the Spanish Armada, right? Philip amasses a fleet, a massive fleet of Spanish galleon warships. Huge. They are twice the size of an English runner warship, which is very, very small. And they outnumbered them. I believe it's almost 2-1. I'll double check that and let you know on Monday because I want to make sure I get the stats right. But outnumber them heavily. However, the English, with a little bit of luck and a very crazy tactic under Elizabeth, known as fire ships. And also, remember when we talked about how there's a chance that Elizabeth never, possibly died a virgin, and that's why she was called the Virgin Queen, and then that's why they named Virginia after her, right? There's a chance, though, that speaking of these fire ships in the Spanish Armada, that she was actually dating this guy on the side named Sir Francis Drake, who was actually a pirate and maybe have given her some of the ideas of how to win the Spanish Armada, but she called him not a pirate, but a privateer. Oh, right? So, fun fact about Elizabeth, though, in the Spanish Armada, this is her victory portrait over the Spanish Armada. A lot of bows, very, very intense. And we talked about how she actually went slightly mentally insane later in life due to inhaling all the lead out of her makeup, right? But this is actually the picture back here of the Spanish Armada. A fire ship is literally an idea probably by Sir Francis Drake or possibly even by Elizabeth, where the English would take an old busted up ship, cover it in turpentine, light it on fire, and launch it at the Spanish vessels, right? And also the English ships were much smaller, but they're going to defeat them because a lot of storms are going to break out right next to, write this down somewhere. Storms on the backside of Ireland and Scotland are going to destroy a lot of the Spanish fleet. So the Spanish lost a major battle that they should have won, and England is going to stay Protestant. Good job, Elizabeth, like a champ, right? So, however, Spanish power is going to begin to decline after the loss to England. A lot of this is due to inflation, the fact that they kicked all the Jews and the Muslims out, and a lot of different things. But before all this happens, Spain is going to go through a golden age of art and literature. Greco and Velázquez are actually some of the most famous painters from this era, and Cervantes is a very, very famous author. So this is actually, let's go to Greco and Velázquez. So I know it's in white, and I know it's hard to see, but Greco and Velázquez are massively famous painters from this period. And they're going to bring on certain ideas known as early forms of bringing back Catholic faith. And they're also going to begin to make very detailed paintings of certain people in the royal family, and also just kind of much more realistic paintings, right? Very, very detailed, very nice, with a lot of depth, okay? But their most famous guy is known as Cervantes. And Cervantes wrote a very, very famous book known as Don Quixote, right? Don Quixote was actually a very romantic book, harking back to the fact that, the old days of the Middle Ages with knights and with, romantic feudalism and, what's it called? Chivalry, right? Because Don Quixote is actually a very, very old man who's fabulously wealthy, has a huge library, and is constantly reading about old knights and things like that, and he falls in love with the romantic idea of the Middle Ages. And he's got a little assistant with him, and his name is Sancho Panza, and he's a very, very small guy that travels with him around different areas. And so this is a very famous scene from Don Quixote, where since Don Quixote is such an old man, and he's kind of crazy and you can't see that well, he actually charges at a windmill because he thinks it's a giant, right? And Sancho Panza was like, I don't know, Don Quixote, we probably shouldn't do that, but he does it anyway, right? It's the romanticism of the dying parts of feudalism and things like that. Kind of the signs that the Middle Ages is ending, right? So Spain is going to weaken due to a lot of different things, but it's mainly due to the Dutch, due to inflation, and to stuff just being a little bit too expensive, right? So mainly due to the inflation part, though. So inflation was when their money begins to lose value. Now, underneath this right here, right, because of so much silver and gold from the colonies in North and South America, right? Write that down. Because of too much gold in the economy from colonies in North and South America. So they were bringing in so much silver and so much gold that it actually caused a massive amount of inflation within Spain, leading to their money to lose a significant amount of value, right? They didn't realize that was going to happen. Nobody really knew it was going to happen. But the Dutch also are going to hurt them a lot because the Dutch are going to revolutionize against them and actually become completely independent, right? So also, stuff became way, way too pricey because there were no Jews or Muslims, very many of them anyway, left in Spain due to the Spanish Inquisition. They actually drove all of them out under Isabella and Ferdinand. And with that, the quality of goods began to drop, and people in Spain began to buy their artisanal goods from places like France or places like England. So actually this led to another dip in the Spanish economy because people weren't making as much money in Spain. And then not to mention the fact, too, that the Dutch are going to revolt against Spain, and with the help of England, causing a massive amount of Spanish debt. It was this whole thing when Philip tried to stop it, and it didn't work, and he made this thing called the Council of Blood, and it didn't work because he actually was trying to torture all these Dutch people into not doing it anymore. It's a big, big failure on his part. But with that, we're going to go ahead and write this down. This is the last thing. But this is going to cause a massive crisis in Europe, right? During the late 1600s, Europe's in a crisis because of things like Spanish-English Civil War, the Spanish Armada, and different wars of religion, right? So we're going to stop there for now. Then we're going to pick this stuff back up on Monday. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your weekend. I will see y'all later, Camden Catholic. Enjoy.